Karen reported my mailbox. I'm the federal postal inspector. It's amazing how fast someone can destroy their life with a Sharpie, a false sense of authority, and the wrong mailbox. She claimed it was too ornate. I claimed it was federally compliant. Only one of us had a badge that could shut down post offices. My name is Eli Mercer, 44 years old, divorced, one son, two pugs. I work for the United States Postal Inspection Service, one of the oldest federal law enforcement branches in the country. In short, I investigate crimes involving the mail, fraud, theft, tampering, mailbox destruction. That's federal and personal. After 20 years in the agency, 12 of those undercover, I moved to a quiet neighborhood just outside Wilmington, North Carolina, split-level home, wrap-around porch, and yes, a custom mailbox, black steel, embossed with my last name in brass. Mounted to a cedar post, I stained myself. It wasn't flashy, it was mine, until Karen decided it wasn't up to her standards. It started with a note, taped to my mailbox like a summons, red ink, slanted handwriting. Mailbox violates HOA Section 3B, remove or replace with approved model. There was no HOA here, at least not a legal one. I'd checked when I bought the property. The development had once planned for an HOA, but it was dissolved before it ever filed with the state. Karen, apparently, hadn't gotten the memo, or maybe she'd written her own. The next morning, I caught her on my security camera measuring my mailbox post with a tape measure, muttering to herself. She snapped a photo, scribbled something on a clipboard, then stormed off. I didn't confront her, yet. I figured she was just another suburban enforcer bored with retirement and high on watching HGTV reruns. But when I came home from work and found my mailbox door ripped off, mail scattered in the yard, and a note scrawled in red Sharpie that read, "Non-compliance has consequences," I made 2 calls, one to the local police, the other to my supervisor at the U.S. PES. Karen had no idea what she'd just done. By the time Officer Daniels arrived, I already had the video queued up. Karen, clipboard, gloves, a crowbar. You're telling me this woman vandalized your mailbox because she said it didn't meet HOA standards? He asked. I nodded. And this, I held up my badge, is a federal offense. He blinked. Oh, Karen showed up 20 minutes later while Daniels was still taking photos of the damage. She strode right past the police cruiser and started yelling across my lawn. You people never follow the rules. That mailbox is a stain on the neighborhood. We have standards. Daniels turned toward her. Ma'am, you need to step back. This is now a federal investigation. Her eyes landed on me. Federal over a mailbox, I clipped my badge to my belt and took a slow step forward. Tampering with the mail is a federal crime. So is destruction of a mailbox. You can look it up. She did. I watched her Google it on her phone while trying to keep her chin up. And that was the beginning of the end. By the time the mailbox was replaced, same model, same brass letters, this time with a small, tamper-proof camera embedded at its base, I'd already opened a file on Karen Holloway, fake HOA leader, mailbox vandal, and soon, a federal defendant. But I wasn't ready to play all my cards yet, because Karen wasn't done, not even close. The morning after her outburst, a flyer landed in every mailbox on our street, not delivered by USPS. Mind you, just shoved under the flag like junk. Bold font, red border, typed like a legal notice. Community compliance alert: residents must conform to neighborhood standards, including but not limited to approved mailbox models. Lawn decoration guidelines, permitted trash days. Violations will result in citation or community-imposed penalties. HOA President Karen Holloway. The gall of it made my hands curl into fists. There was no HOA, no charter, no state registration. Nothing legal at all. But that didn't stop Karen from trying to enforce her made-up rules on everyone, especially the new homeowners, immigrants, veterans, and retirees who didn't want trouble. Which is why I didn't just throw the flyer away. I made copies. And then I knocked on every single door on Maple Run Drive. I wasn't there to flash a badge or rattle a saber. I was there as a neighbor. Hey, I'm Eli New Guy with the black mailbox Karen hates. Just wanted to let you know, that flyer she put in your box, it's not legal. In fact, it's a federal offense to touch someone else's mailbox like that. Some were skeptical. Some looked terrified. A few told me quietly about fines they'd paid in cash to avoid escalation. One elderly couple admitted Karen had threatened to report their home to the county unless they repainted their garage. This wasn't just petty HOA Karen energy. This was fraud, coercion, harassment, and it was bigger than I thought. By the end of the week, I had a list of 24 neighbors people who'd been intimidated, fined, or shamed into compliance with fake HOA rules. Karen used a mix of scare tactics, handwritten notices on red paper, verbal threats, and what she called strike citations taped to front doors like scarlet letters. She printed them herself, in her garage, on fake HOA letterhead she designed in Microsoft Word. But the worst part, she convinced 5 other neighbors to act as compliance officers. I found this out when a woman named Noreen, quiet, sweet, about 65, slipped a manila envelope into my hands outside the dog park and whispered, "Karen said we'd be sued if we didn't enforce the rules." I just wanted to tend my garden. Inside meeting minutes, collections, spreadsheets, and a fake neighborhood governance charter signed by Karen Holloway, president and officer of civil order. This wasn't delusion, it was a full-blown scam. I took the file straight to Wilmington's county records office. As I suspected, there was no active HOA listed for our subdivision. Nothing had been renewed in over 15 years. But the most damning evidence. The old HOA paperwork filed and defunct had a completely different board. No mention of Karen, no records of transfer, no legal rights to enforce anything. I pulled my badge and made a call. "Hey, it's Mercer. Got a community HOA scam possibly tied to mail fraud, intimidation, and federal mailbox tampering. I need a task force review." Karen must have sensed something, because the very next day, I got another flyer. This time, it was just for me, taped to my door, mailbox, garage, and stapled to my tree. Community protection notice. Residents are warned that rogue individuals are impersonating federal agents, harassing neighbors, and spreading dangerous misinformation about Maple Run HOA. These actors will be dealt with accordingly. Signed, HOA President Karen Holloway. I didn't laugh. I documented it. The next morning, I met with my team at the USPs. We held the meeting in my garage. One agent was ex-NSA, another from financial crimes, all off-duty, all discreet. We reviewed the documents, mapped out her citation trail, and identified every illegal notice she'd posted. She's using fake federal language. One of them said, she refers to Code 18 USC mailbox standards. But that doesn't even exist. She's collecting money under false pretenses, impersonating authority, and tampering with mailboxes. I added, she's crossed into criminal territory. And then came the twist. Agent Sims, my longtime partner, opened her laptop and turned the screen toward us. A public Facebook group, Maple Run HOA Patriots Private Guests, who the admin was Karen Holloway. Recent posts included new compliance cameras installed near violators' homes. Mail inspector has been flagged for federal investigation. We will root out the un-American elements destroying our suburb. Over 400 members. Photos. Addresses. Thinly veiled threats. It wasn't just about a mailbox anymore. It was about control. The next day, I put out a call to the 24 neighbors on my list and invited them to a community transparency meeting at the local library. 15 showed up. They shared their stories, took notes. Some even cried. And when I showed them my badge, read the real laws, and promised them Karen would face justice, they stood up and applauded. That was the moment we stopped being a block of victims and became a resistance. When Karen found out about the community meeting, she lost her mind. Not quietly, not privately, loudly, publicly, on Nextdoor, Facebook, and in the form of neon orange emergency notices zip-tied to lampposts. Residents are warned of a rogue mail claiming federal status in an attempt to dismantle our peaceful HOA. Stay vigilant. Do not engage. She called me a fraud. She called the meeting an insurrection. And she doubled down on her campaign of control this time by adding surveillance. The Holloway house was just 3 doors down from mine. White vinyl siding, stone lion statues out front, and now 6 new cameras bolted to the roofline, all aimed directly at my property. One of them had infrared. I confirmed it with a flashlight test. That thing blinked red at night like a sniper scope. I reported it, not as harassment, but as illegal surveillance across private property lines. She didn't stop there. 2 days later, a drone buzzed over my back patio. It hovered low, right above the mailbox. It had a speaker. Remove non-standard mailbox or face sanction. It was Karen's voice. Digitize. On a loop. My pugs barked until they collapsed from exhaustion. I called it in as a federal interference with a USPS delivery zone. Because that day, my carrier refused to deliver the mail. The drone spooked her. That was the turning point. Now the post office was pissed, too. Agent Sims and I filed the formal charges that Friday 18th USC Perv 1705, destruction of letterboxes, 18 USC Perv 912, impersonation of a federal officer, State Penal Code 523, coercion and harassment, fraudulent collection of non-existent dues. The paper trail was airtight, so we did what federal agents do best. We built the sting. It wasn't flashy, it didn't need to be. All we had to do was invite Karen to a mediation meeting with some of her most vocal supporters, under the guise of a neighborhood dispute resolution. We held it at the community center. Sunday at noon. Karen walked in wearing a power blazer and pearl earrings, clutching a binder stuffed with fake citations. She smiled like a monarch addressing her court. You people just want to break the rules because you hate order. That's when I stood up, showed my badge, read her the federal statutes she'd violated, and informed her on camera that she was now under federal investigation. The color drained from her face. Then she did something I didn't expect. She lunged, screamed, shoved the table, tried to knock the camera off the tripod. Agent Sims, recording from the corner, didn't even blink. She calmly walked forward and said, "Ms. Holloway, this is your official notice to cease and desist all HOA-related activity. The United States Postal Inspection Service will be pressing charges for federal mailbox tampering, mail obstruction, and impersonation of a federal officer." The silence was nuclear. Karen opened her mouth like she was going to argue, but all that came out was a sound somewhere between a growl and a wheeze. 2 neighbors recorded the entire confrontation and uploaded it to YouTube and TikTok before we even left the room. By sunset, it had 30,000 views. By Monday, it was on the local news. The headline, "Fake HOA, President Faces Federal Charges Over Mailbox Scheme," and under it a still shot of me holding my badge, while Karen's mouth hung open like a broken hinge. The fallout hit like a thunderclap. Karen's so-called compliance officers abandoned ship. Noreen issued a public apology on Facebook and returned every penny she'd collected on behalf of the HOA. Half the residents she'd fined showed up at the precinct to give statements. The drone confiscated, the cameras taken down. But the most satisfying part, a real USPS investigator flew in from DC to meet with my postmaster and confirm that Karen's flyer campaign, drone harassment, and mailbox vandalism had caused official disruption to mail service. That made it a federal service obstruction case, mandatory minimums. Karen's lawyer nearly choked when he heard the sentencing guidelines. She tried to pivot, tried to spin it. I was protecting the aesthetic of our neighborhood. I was doing my civic duty, but no one bought it. Not after the videos. Not after the tearful testimonies from the elderly woman she'd threatened with code violations. Not after my carrier, Maria, gave a statement on how unsafe she felt delivering mail to our block. Karen's Facebook group vanished overnight. Her home went dark. For the first time since I moved in, the lions on her lawn looked like they'd given up. The federal court date was set. She'd been charged, formally, and the residents of Maple Run. They were furious, but they were also free. free to repaint their mailboxes, free to plant sunflowers in their yards, free to enjoy the neighborhood without the fear of Karen's clipboard of shame. And that was just the beginning. You'd think being federally indicted would have knocked some sense into Karen. It didn't. She doubled down. Her final move was the most desperate yet, and almost brilliant, in a twisted, Karen-esque way. She tried to shift the narrative. It started with a blog. Yes, a blog. Karen launched Citizens for Neighborhood Order, complete with a professional-looking logo and a homepage that read, "When lawless agents of the deep state threaten your cul-de-sac, real Americans fight back." It got picked up by a couple fringe forums, but the real blow came when she hired a PR firm. Suddenly, reporters started calling me. A lot. Some wanted to know if I was abusing federal power to settle a personal dispute. One headline read, "Federal Agent Bullies Suburban Mom Over Decorative Mailbox." That stung. Even though the public saw right through her, the smear campaign had legs. Karen gave interviews from her porch. She even staged a neighborhood cleanup event where she wore a t-shirt that said Truth, Order, HOA. But what she didn't realize, she'd violated her court order just by organizing the event. Because the federal cease and desist included no further community enforcement activity, even symbolic. That gave us leverage. Meanwhile, I wasn't alone anymore. Maple Run was waking up. Remember Eleanor from Lot 9? She was 78, a widow who'd stopped gardening because Karen fined her for disruptive colors in her flower bed. She came to my door with a pie and a petition. I'm tired of hiding from my own azaleas. She'd collected over 60 signatures asking the county to formally dissolve any authority claimed by the Maple Run Property Oversight Board, the fake HOA Karen invented. Turns out, it had never been legally incorporated. No tax ID, no charter, nothing. Just a stack of Word docs and a rogue PayPal account. With the county clerk's help, I filed the petition. The motion to nullify the Maple Run HOA passed unanimously. But that wasn't all. My office received a flood of tips. Turns out Karen had done more than mess with my mailbox. She'd intercepted someone else's parcel, mistaking it for a suspicious box, and opened it. That was a federal offense. Again. Then came the bombshell. A younger neighbor, Carlos, came forward with video evidence, Karen demanding he submit his bike lock key for inspection because she claimed his chain was attracting criminals. He refused. She called the police. That call recorded. And in it, she said she was authorized to conduct safety checks as HOA president. Game over. We called in the U.S. attorney. They filed additional charges: false representation to law enforcement, unlawful interference with private property, tampering with a federal investigation. Karen was now facing multiple felonies. Her attorney tried to cut a deal. It failed when she refused to admit wrongdoing. Then came the court date. Every bench in the gallery was filled. Residents in business casual. A few wore pins shaped like little mailboxes. Karen arrived flanked by lawyers. She wore white, of course, and when the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, she stood up, cleared her throat, and said, "I only did what I thought was right. I protected my neighborhood, and I would do it again." The courtroom gasped. The judge blinked like he couldn't believe she just said that out loud. Then he read her sentence. 6 months of probation, 3 months of home detention, a $12,000 fine, and a permanent federal record for obstruction of mail and impersonation of authority. Karen didn't cry. She looked stunned, betrayed, like she'd spent her whole life climbing a pyramid of delusion and now realized it was made of sand. But here's the thing about a community waking up. It doesn't go back to sleep. Neighbors who barely spoke before were now organizing real events, voluntary ones, with real smiles and actual potluck dishes. We rebuilt the community board, not an HOA, but a neighborhood advisory circle. No dues, no fines, just folks helping folks. Carlos repainted his bike bright neon orange, just to spite Karen. Eleanor's azaleas won best yard in our first neighborhood celebration. And me, I finally added the brass eagle to my mailbox. Took my time with the bolts. I installed it while humming "God Bless America." They say justice doesn't always arrive on time, but when it does, it hits like a certified package with signature confirmation, undeniable, irreversible, and unforgettable. Karen's empire didn't collapse in a single day. It crumbled slowly, like mold creeping through drywall, until there was no hiding the rot. After the sentencing, she disappeared behind drawn curtains. No more porch interviews, no more drone flyovers. The HOA compliance unit vest vanished. So did the fake citations taped to neighbors' doors. But the community she tried to dominate, we weren't vanishing with her. We got to work. We cleaned up the wreckage she left behind, not just broken trust and warped fences, but the emotional debris she scattered across Maple Run like shrapnel. Carlos, the college kid she harassed, got a city internship in urban policy. Said the whole ordeal inspired him to study community governance the real way. Eleanor's story went viral. Her flower beds became a symbol. An artist downtown painted a mural of her holding a sunflower, captioned, "Grow Free." As for me, I got promoted, assistant regional inspector. Funny thing, I didn't even apply. My supervisor said, "It's rare we see someone take down a neighborhood tyrant and fix the morale of a town." But what truly changed wasn't my title. It was how the neighborhood saw itself. People stopped whispering and started voting, attending city council meetings, reading ordinances, asking questions. We put up a public board near the park, not for rules, but for announcements, birthdays, bake sales, lost pets. One corner always held a printed copy of the U.S. Constitution, sealed in plastic. Right next to it, a laminated photo of my mailbox, eagle shining. Karen. She tried to move, twice, but word traveled. People knew. She wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She was a cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when fake power meets real accountability. By year's end, she was still here, quiet, withdrawn, avoided at block parties. Some said it was too harsh, others, not enough. Me, I didn't need revenge. I had justice. And a neighborhood that finally saw what it meant to stand together. There was one moment, though, I'll never forget. I was walking the dog when I saw her across the street, arms crossed, staring at the mailbox again. She said nothing, just looked, then turned away and went inside, door clicking shut behind her like punctuation. Maybe it was remorse. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was just the wind. Didn't matter, because the mailbox stood tall, and this time, nobody could touch it. Call to action. What does justice look like in your community? Have you seen someone abuse power or stand up to it? Let's talk about it. Share your story, your outrage, or your hope, because silence lets fake authority win. And it's time we all raised our voices and maybe our mailboxes too.